Welcome. Starting with the top story that we are tracking for you. The U.S. Capitol Hill riot is back in the spotlight. The U.S. Senate is hearing the testimonies of 4 law enforcement officials about what led to the mob violence on the 6th of January. Among the witnesses are former House Sergeant at Arms Paul D. Irving, former Senate Sergeant at Arms Michael C. Stenger, and former Capitol Police Chief Stephen A. Sund, and Acting D.C. Police Chief Robert J. Conti III. Now, all 3 former officials had resigned under pressure in the wake of the riots, in which 5 people lost their lives and dozens were injured. From the opening statements of the congressional hearing, it has been clarified that the security personnel had anticipated civil disobedience and protests similar in nature to previous Make America Great Again rallies. Listen in to the opening statements.
With prior demonstrations after the election, we recognize that there was a possibility of violence, especially after dark as smaller groups of protesters gathered with malicious intent on our city streets. To be clear, available intelligence pointed to a large presence of some of the same groups that had contributed to violence in the city after demonstrations in November and December. The district had intelligence indicating the potential for violent actions in the streets of the District of Columbia. In preparation for the anticipated demonstrations and the possibility of violence on city streets, MPD was fully deployed on 12-hour shifts the week of January 4th, with days off and leave canceled.
I've been in policing for almost 30 years. The events I witnessed on January 6th was the worst attack on law enforcement and our democracy that I've seen in my entire career. I witnessed insurgents beating police officers with fists, pipes, sticks, bats, metal barricades, and flagpoles. These criminals came prepared for war. They came with their own radio system to coordinate the attack, and climbing gear and other equipment to defeat the Capitol's security features. I am sickened by what I witnessed that day. Our officers fought valiantly, using batons, shields, chemical munitions, and pepper ball guns to hold back the attackers. Capitol Police and responding law enforcement agencies showed tremendous restraint by not using their firearms, which would have likely led to a more chaotic situation and a possible mass casualty incident.
We have to be careful of returning to a time when possibility rather than probability drives security planning. For the events of January 6th certainly reveal that a review of intelligence should be done. Returning to the concept of possibility driving security operations may result in poor use of resources. This is the constant give and take of security planning. There is an opportunity to learn lessons from the events of January 6th. Investigations should be considered as to the funding and traveling what appears to be professional agitators.
We began planning for the protests of January 6th in December 2020. The planning relied on what we understood to be credible intelligence provided by various state and federal agencies, including a special event assessment issued by the Capitol Police on January 3rd. The January 3rd assessment forecast that the protests were, quote, expected to be similar to the previous million MAGA March rallies that had taken place in November and December 2020. Every Capitol Police daily intelligence report between January 4 and January 6th, including on January 6th, forecast the chance of civil disobedience or arrest during the protests as remote to improbable. I relied on that intelligence when overseeing the security plan put forth by Chief Sund. The chief's plan took on an all-hands-on-deck approach, whereby every available sworn Capitol Police employee with police powers was assigned to work on January 6th.
The first congressional hearing of 2021 aims at digging into the security failures at Capitol Hill. The Senate Homeland Security Committee has convened the hearing in conjunction with the Senate Rules Committee. The Capitol Police have confirmed that the department has suspended 6 officers and is investigating 35 others for their actions on the 6th of January. Another joint hearing is set with federal agencies, including the FBI, for next week. The committee's joint investigation is separate from the 9/11 Commission-style panel, which, once appointed, is expected to complete an independent report on the Capitol attack. More than 250 people have been arrested and charged in connection with the attack, and the most serious charges include conspiracy. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Now, for more on this, we're being joined by our correspondent, Susan Tehrani from New York. Good evening to you, Susan. What does this hearing of the senators intend to do when the world was overwhelmed with the entire act on camera?
That's right, Allison. Really, the world was witnessing something that the United States Capitol had never experienced, at least not in the past 200 years, and that was the optics. And this Senate hearing, which will be a part of a series of bipartisan investigative hearings on the Capitol 6 riots, the deadly riots, will demonstrate and let the public perhaps further understand what security officials were going through, what they knew, how they were prepared prior to the attack, what were the security failures, and most of all, something that will be a very important point moving forward: why were the National Guards not deployed sooner, considering the fact that we did hear in today's hearing earlier that the D.C. police chief said that he was basically, quote unquote, pleading for the National Guards to be sent to D.C. because he knew that his forces could not control what was happening. So the optics, they were on camera for people to see, but this is somewhat of a behind-the-scene account where not just the American public, but lawmakers will be able to decide how to move forward and how high up the chain of command does responsibility really lie, considering the fact that we now know, again, due to this hearing a little earlier today, which started at 10 a.m. local time here on the East Coast, that security officials said that they did not have the proper intel on what to expect even the night before. They got some intelligence briefings, but they had raw intelligence, which were a series of Facebook posts and other material that were classified. They didn't mention, but it wasn't really a clear-cut plan. And what seems to be right now unfolding as a narrative is that there wasn't a proper coordinated intelligence briefing among different officials. So we'll have to wait and see, but let's also take a look at what's not being said right now, and we'll see if this comes up in the future proceedings and these hearings. And that's the fact that once you start a hearing like this and a wide-scale investigation like this, then this really also brings into the question of to how much and to what extent the United States has the authority and the ability and the need after an attack like this to cast a wide net of surveillance across the country and against the population, in this case because these rioters were domestic. So we did see this wide net of surveillance taking place after 9/11, and this is and may, some security officials and experts say, lead up to that conclusion that not only there was not enough coordination between intelligence services in the country, which again happened also during 9/11, and they sort of brought them together under the Department of Homeland Security. First that, and second of all, perhaps we need more surveillance. In the case of 9/11, it was with foreign terrorists and foreign outlets. In this case, if a 9/11 style commission panel is to be set because of what happened on January 6th, we will expect to see the issues of privacy, surveillance, and how to secure the United States Capitol, not just with ongoing troops and the presence of permanent U.S. troops around the state capitol, but also maybe moving back, or better to say moving forward, on how to surveil individuals and criminals to for this not to happen again.
Right, and all the controversial questions that come up with that. Now, the January 6th incident has been described as a colossal breakdown in intelligence gathering and security preparations, a systemic failure, and so forth. Will there be accountability fixed in the same proportion? And just how far up the order could it go?
Yeah. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, when we talk to experts and people who have had security clearances on the Capitol for many years, whether as working there as lawmakers or as staff, they say that it has to be, it takes a while before it goes up the chain of command. But what we may be seeing is, because this incident happened during the Trump administration, and because the second in command, Vice President Mike Pence, was in danger, his life was basically in danger before he was swept away, this could go very high in the chain of command. How much responsibility these intelligence communities will be able to take is yet to be seen. But for now, I think the public got a bird's eye view on the amount of authority and ability security officials on the ground had to be able to counter this attack. And I think this is the first step. And as anything with the Trump administration, the previous administration, we will expect a very wide-scale investigation into his FBI and into his Department of Homeland Security, and to what extent those officials knew. So they probably will be called to testify or subpoena.
Susan, great to talk to you. Thank you for bringing us all the details on the latest coming out of the US. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.